Hello everybody, and welcome to Season 2 of the C-Bus Paranormal Paracast. I'm your host, Johnathon Robson, and on today's episode, we're escaping Ohio and heading down to Flatwoods, West Virginia, home of today's topic, the Flatwoods Monster. This should be a fun episode. Most of you know that I spent a considerable amount of time traveling last year for topics and content for the show. I honestly feel that it's very important to not only research a location, but also to visit and experience it for myself. In turn, I've been on the trail of several beasts and ghouls, and now it's time to share some of my experiences with you. On this season, we'll be discussing violent prison hauntings, monster sightings, crime scenes, and we'll even take a trip back in time to take a look at one of our team's previous investigations. I think I've created a pretty fun schedule for the new year, and I hope you guys are looking forward to the adventures ahead. Going into the new year, there have been a few tweaks to our normal show format. Instead of answering questions during each episode, I've decided that I'll record Q&A episodes every so often and put them on our audio feed. This way I can get to more questions, and it'll give you guys more time to listen to each episode and prepare your questions accordingly. During my downtime, I've also fixed a problem that we were having on our contact form on cbusparanormal.com. So now not only can you submit questions on there, but it will also go directly to my email. Also, as you've heard on the last two episodes, I will be changing up our intro and outro songs from time to time, likely depending on the episode's topic. I'd like to thank Carl Casey at White Bat Audio for not only making some awesome music, but for also making his tracks readily available for creators to use. I picked up a shirt from his website last month in a show of support, and I'll gladly wear it and support him whenever possible. You can check out White Bat Audio on YouTube to sample some of Carl's awesome music, and also buy some of his work at whitebataudio.com. Before we get into today's discussion, I would like to remind everybody that we now have a second series of podcast episodes entitled Legends and Lore that debuted last month on our Patreon. The Legends and Lore series focuses on smaller locations, monsters, and stories that are also based on locations the team has visited and in some cases investigated over the years. Our first episode entitled Fairhaven Monster debuted last month, and our next episode will air in February, and will be based on Squire's Castle. All of our monthly Patreon subscribers will have access to these episodes as they debut, and these episodes will be a nice bonus for those of you that would like to help donate and contribute to the show. Every little bit helps, and it's truly appreciated. Eventually, we will share some of these episodes here on our main audio feed, but this will be several months after they've aired on Patreon. I'm thinking these episodes will make a nice bonus for the months where the Paracast doesn't air, and possibly at the end of the year in between seasons. I'm always looking for new ideas and content, and it's been fun to branch out for the new series. Hopefully more announcements will be coming soon. At this time, I would like to thank and welcome my good friend Kim Salzwedel to our Patreon family. Kim was a major player and volunteer in helping turn Prospect Place Mansion around over the last few years. She was there when our volunteer group started at the mansion around 2015, and would later become one of the new board members in 2017. Kim is also a fellow investigator, and it was always fun bouncing stories and our experiences off of each other back in the day. Kim is a very cool person, and it was an honor to battle in the trenches with her during our time as board members at the mansion. Thank you once again for the support, Kim, and hopefully our paths will cross again here soon. That being said, let's get into today's topic and discuss the Flatwoods Monster. The town of Flatwoods, West Virginia was incorporated in 1902, but it first appeared on maps as early as 1873. The town itself was located in Braxton County. It's believed that the level upland around Flatwoods was likely the site of Native American villages before the arrival of European settlers, and as of the 2020 census, the town is believed to have around 264 people currently living there. Driving into Flatwoods for the first time, visitors will likely encounter an old sign that states "Welcome to Flatwoods, home of the Green Monster." This small town is now infamous for a unique event that occurred there on September 12, 1952. It was the first sighting of what is now known as the Flatwoods Monster, and its story made worldwide news at the time. Before I discuss this infamous sighting, it's also important to note that the monster's been referenced under many different names over the years, including the Flatwoods Monster, the Braxton County Monster, the Phantom of Flatwoods, and today the locals affectionately refer to the creature as Braxy. A national bulletin and statement was released shortly after the sighting. I'm going to read from the Hinton Daily newspaper, September 15, 1952 edition. Braxton County residents report giant red monster. Sutton, West Virginia. Eyewitness accounts of a tall glowing monster with a blood-red face skulking in the hills divided Braxton County today into two camps, believers and skeptics. 7 persons said they saw an unearthly being described as worse than Frankenstein in the hills above Flatwood, West Virginia Friday night. State police and a number of residents hooted at the reports as a product of mass hysteria. Police said the eyewitnesses' guesses to the monster's height varied between 7 and 17 feet. The excitement began when the 2 young sons of Miss Catherine May, a Flatwoods beautician, said they saw a flying saucer land on C.B. Fisher's farm near here. Miss May, National Guardsman Gene Lemon, and 5 boys climbed a hill on the Fisher Hill farm to look for the saucer. Miss May said that a fire-breathing monster 10 feet tall with a bright green body and a blood-red face bounced and floated toward them. It looked worse than Frankenstein, she said. It couldn't have been human. Lemon, 17, said he thought he saw a possum or a coon until he put his flashlight on the thing. It was then that he saw a monster with a blushing face and a green body that seemed to glow. Miss May and Lemon stared and then screamed as the monster duck-walked toward them. All of them fled, occasionally looking over their shoulders. The monster, Miss May said, had an overpowering metallic odor that nauseated them. She said they vomited for several hours. A. Lee Stewart, co-publisher of the Braxton County Democrat, received the first report from Miss May. The veteran newspaperman organized an armed posse and went to the scene. The odor was still there, Stewart said. It was sort of warm and sickening, and there were about 2 places about 6 to 8 feet in diameter where the brush was trampled down. Stewart said he did not know what to think. I hate to say I believe it, but I hate to say I don't believe it, Stewart said. These people were scared, badly scared, and I sure smelled something. And so it began. The original report that I just read missed a few of the key details, so I'm going to fill in some of the gaps at this time. On an almost fully dark evening on September 12, 1952, Edward May, Freddie May, Neil Nunley, and Tommy Heyer were playing on the lawn of Flatwoods Elementary School. Suddenly a bright light streaked across the sky and appeared to crash into the hillside on G. Bailey Fisher's farm. The boys ran to see what it was they saw in the sky, and on the way they would stop by the May home and inform Kathleen May, the May boys' mother, what they had seen. Kathleen called on National Guardsman Eugene Lemon and a family dog Richie to accompany her and the boys to the crash site. Upon reaching the believed crash site, the group saw a pulsing red light. As Lemon shined his flashlight up, the group witnessed the terrifying monster, believed to be over 10 feet tall, with a head that was shaped like a spade. The creature appeared to have a dark metal dress type of body, and its hands were twisted and clawed. Its eyes seemed to grow with an eerie orange color. The monster appeared to levitate and gave off a strange, sickening stench. The creature hissed and glided toward the witnesses as they ran away in pure terror. Some members of their group suffered from throat irritation, vomiting, and nausea, which persisted for days. These symptoms were simply passed off as the side effects of hysteria. I'm not gonna lie, this story's always fascinated me, and I think it's one of the more credible monster sightings out there. Some folks refer to the Flatwoods Monster as a cryptid, but I personally have always seen it as more of an alien being. Whatever your thoughts, it's certainly an interesting story. In this case, you have 7 witnesses that all claim they saw something in the hills of Flatwoods. When they trespassed onto the neighbor's property, something scared the living hell out of them. After the incident, the witnesses had sketches drawn to describe what they seen in the woods. While these sketches have been reprinted several times over the years, the original sketches were thought to have been lost to history, but they have resurfaced in recent years. Miss May and Gene Lemons were later invited to tell their story on We the People, a nationally syndicated television show, and they would also later talk to several magazines about the incident. After a few days, the town's officials started trying to come up with logical explanations for the sighting. The following statement was reported by the News Journal, Mansfield, Ohio edition on September 19, 1952, and other various papers throughout the country. Investigators find nothing. Metallic monster goes unexplained. Sutton, West Virginia. West Virginia State Police said today they have no explanation for the unearthly monster reportedly seen in the hills near here. Police Captain J.B. Jack said investigators could find nothing that would shed light on the story told by 7 persons in the central West Virginia area who said they saw the thing. It all started when Miss Kathleen May Flatwood and 6 boys climbed a nearby hill last Friday to investigate her 2 young sons' reports that a flying saucer had landed there. Miss May said they were frozen in their tracks by the sight of a fire-breathing monster 10 feet tall with a bright body and a blood-red face. She said the monster was coming toward them with a bouncing, floating motion and had a strong, sickening metallic odor. When the group reported what they'd seen, A. Lee Stewart, a newspaperman from Sutton, organized an armed posse and went in to investigate. After searching the hilltop, Stewart reported the odor was still there. He also said the men found 2 places 6 to 8 feet in diameter where the brush had been trampled down. Stewart said he didn't think the monster was caused by the reflected light from a flashlight. The possibility that a flashlight one boy carried had reflected from a moss-covered tree with an animal in it had been suggested. Major J. Holt Byrne, who is also a newsman, said he believed the monster was vapor. Byrne said the vapor might have come from a meteor that was reportedly seen in the area the same night. Byrne suggested the meteor might explain both the boys' flying saucer report and a metallic odor attributed to the monster. No one has been able to make a definitive explanation of the incident. Those people that reported seeing the thing were scared, bad scared, he said. So the investigators tried to disprove the incident by referencing shadow play caused by a flashlight or an animal in a tree. We'll be coming back to this later in the episode. I also think it's important to note that there were 2 other sightings of the monster around this time period. While the first reported sighting gets most of the press, and rightfully so, I think we should also discuss these other possible encounters. Another sighting of the creature similar in description to the Flatwoods Monster was reported by Miss Audrey Harper, not long before the infamous sighting on Fisher's Farm. Miss Harper claims to have seen the monster while she was walking through the woods near Heaters, West Virginia, which is about 5 miles north of Flatwoods. Apparently Harper and a friend were taking a shortcut through the woods to go to a nearby general store. About a half a mile into their walk they noticed a ball of fire on one of the hills they were passing. Harper dismissed it, assuming one of her neighbors were fox chasing. When she glanced back, she saw the fire had vanished, and in its place stood a dark, tall silhouette of a man-shaped figure. Terrified, Harper and her friend ran from the area. I'm personally a little skeptical of this encounter. This event wasn't reported until after the sighting on Fisher's Farm. Miss Harper was already thinking the fire was caused by a neighbor who was fox chasing. She turned around, and the fire was put out, and a dark silhouette was standing near where the fire was, and looked human-like. To me, it sounds like there was a good chance it was human. It's hard to tell how close they were to the fire and possible creature. So without context, I'm not sure how close they were to it and how much they could truly see from their perspective. The next sighting was claimed on the day after the Fisher Farm incident. On September 13th, another strange sighting occurred near Strange Creek, about 20 miles south of Flatwoods. A couple and her 18-month son were driving through the rural area between Clay and Braxton County on Route 4 when their car died. They attempted to restart the car to no avail. It was nighttime and the road was deserted. While the couple were trying to decide on what to do, a foul smell filled the air. A strange light filled the darkness, and the couple witnessed a 10-foot tall creature hovering in front of their car. In this incident, the creature's head was reportedly reptilian and bony, without the previously reported spade-shaped helmet or hood. Scared, the couple ran into the car as the creature dragged its hand across the hood before disappearing into the woods. Once the monster was gone, the car restarted and the family sped away. This story would later be published for Mail magazine in 1955. So yeah, a little creepy, and once again there was more than one witness, and they both described similar characteristics from the Fisher Farm sighting. It's certainly interesting. I'll continue our story of the Flatwoods Monster after this short break. Paranormal investigators, it's a new year, and you know what that means. It's time to start planning for your upcoming investigations and to also stock up on new ghost hunting devices. Thankfully, GhostStop has you covered. GhostStop has everything you need to advance your team's research and theories. They have digital recorders, camcorders, thermal imagers, EMF devices, laser grids, and much, much more. If you need it, they likely have it. Our team has used several GhostStop products over the years. Click the GhostStop link on this episode's information panel or on our website at cbusparanormal.com, and you can browse through their extensive catalog and place your order today. By using the show's affiliate link on our player and website, you'll also be supporting our show, and this lets GhostStop know that we sent you. GhostStop, paranormal equipment made by investigators for investigators. Are you interested in starting your own podcast, but not sure how to get started? Perhaps it's time to look to Buzzsprout for some direction. Buzzsprout has helped over 100,000 podcasters get their projects off the ground, and they can help you get your podcast listed on every major podcasting platform. They also have several guides to help you navigate through the process of recording and finding the right equipment to use. With Buzzsprout, you get a podcasting website, audio players, and detailed analytics to see how people are listening to your show. They will also provide you with the necessary tools to promote your episodes. Podcasting isn't hard when you have the right partners, and Buzzsprout wants to see you succeed. Click our Buzzsprout affiliate link on this media player's information panel to start your journey into podcasting. It lets Buzzsprout know that we sent you, and you'll receive a $20 credit if you sign up for one of their paid hosting plans after your second paid invoice. Buzzsprout. Let's create something great together. Welcome back. Since we've discussed the three main sightings that are often referenced to this monster, I think it's time we start looking at the possible explanations for these sightings. Previously, I mentioned that the Flatwoods investigators tried to disprove the Maze sighting by referencing shadow play with the group's flashlights, as well as the possibility that the group may have misidentified an animal and mistaken it as a monster, something that might not be as illogical as it sounds on the surface. On prior episodes of the Paracast, we briefly discussed the effects of sci-fi pop culture on the 1950s and 60s generations. It was obviously a big deal back then with the sci-fi movies and stories having a fairly large cultural impact. I love the vintage films and stories myself, so it's always cool to go back in time and collect the old magazines, comics, and movies from this era. I don't think it's too far-fetched to say that the Flatwoods Monster might have even inspired the classic Blob movie. I mean, the Blob came out 6 years after this sighting, and it was a creature that crash-landed on a meteorite from space on a hill. Granted, the monster was a little different, but there are certainly some similarities between the story and the beginning of the film. Ironically, in the film, a couple parked at Lover's Lane witnessed the crash, which also likely inspired a variation of the Orange Eyes monster story we discussed on the Charles Mill episode. See how all these things kind of tie together? I've also seen a few people try to tie the Flatwoods Monster spade-shaped helmet to a Galaxy fiction magazine that came out in August of 1952, 1 month before the original sighting. Is it possible that the boys' overactive imaginations ran wild with fright at the thought of what they perceived aliens to look like? It's an interesting thought, but it might also have just been a coincidence. UFOs were all over the news during this time period. In a way, you can say the American public had become obsessed with the thoughts of spaceships and alien beings around this time. So let's break down what are believed to be the rational explanations for this sighting. The spaceship that the group believed crashed into the mountain was likely a meteor. The phenomenon was viewed by multiple people in states during the night of the Flatwoods sighting. As far as the meteor crashing into the hillside, many people believe it was just an illusion caused by where the boys were standing at low elevations. And the pulsing red lights? Many claim they could have been from a passing plane. The dreadful stench is believed to have been caused by a pungent-smelling grass that grows all over the area in question. Let's take a second to discuss the reported trampled grass spots and the large skid marks found at the crash site itself. Skeptics jumped to two theories on this. At first, they stated the marks could have been caused by the farmer's tractor, but he refuted this and stated that he didn't have the tractor on the hillside in that area. It was later found out that a local man had also visited the spot about an hour after the sighting, hoping to see something. Skeptics believe the marks were caused by the man's truck, and it's believed that the truck was leaking oil at the time. Oddly enough, an oil-like substance was found all over the crash site, but it never made the papers. After Kathleen and the boys had their encounter, Miss May noticed an oil-like substance all over the dress she was wearing. This is important because she was at the crash site long before the local man in question. Reports of this oil-like substance also stated that it was all around the crash site. including on the trees and objects above the ground. This substance was apparently scraped off of Miss May's clothing for government testing. However, the results were never provided to the family or the public, which is interesting and provides at least one plot hole in the theory of many skeptics. So what about the monster itself? The most common and seemingly accepted explanation of what the maze group likely witnessed was an everyday animal, oddly enough, an owl. Skeptics believe that the group likely mistaked the winged creature for a monster the night of the sighting. Obviously, the conditions were extremely dark, and the group was likely on edge at the time. When they shined their flashlight towards a tree, the owl likely lunged at them and scared them out of their wits. Some skeptics have also stated it might have been a mother owl protecting her nest of young. As far as the features of the monster, barn owls have white faces that look similar to an upside-down spade. Nocturnal animals also have reflective elements in their eyes that help them see in the dark, which explains the glowing eyes. Owls also have claws as described by the witnesses and have an eerie hissing screeching sound. The group never really gave a clear description of the bottom of the monster, and skeptics refer to an owl sitting in a tree giving the illusion of added height, and the green dress might have been a tree that was misidentified in the heat of the moment. Some other skeptics believe that it could have just simply been a kid or a prankster playing a hoax on the community, and there are some rather ridiculous diagrams and photos of this theory online how a kid likely could have pulled it off. It's honestly rather humorous and doubtful. I'll post some photos of this online at some point. I think you guys will all agree that it's not a very likely scenario with the diagram provided. So what are my thoughts on all of this? Unfortunately, I don't have access to the original crash site as it's private property. However, in this case, I don't really buy a few of the skeptical viewpoints either. A lot of the explanations seem to be rushed and forced to support the skeptical narrative. While I appreciate the efforts of trying to find logical explanations, I'm not sure they effectively addressed all the concerns in this case. I find it hard to believe that out of 7 witnesses, none of them were familiar with or could identify an owl, even at night. There was also never a mention in the monster description about seeing flapping wings. Scared or not, I feel at least one of them could have made a distinction if that was the case. The witnesses also described the pulsating red lights as being on the hill, not above or around it like a passing plane. Again, out of 7 people, they wouldn't have been able to identify a plane? Both explanations seem a little forced in my opinion. I can certainly find the owl theory plausible and highly possible, but there are a lot of it could have beens being thrown around. I just don't think all the details have been fully ironed out, even with the passage of time. Do I believe this monster ever existed? Possibly, but honestly probably not. But I'm still curious as what these folks actually experienced on that night. Without being there, I doubt any of us will truly know. When interviewed in the early part of the 1990s, Kathleen recalled that 2 men, first identifying themselves as reporters and then acknowledging they were employees of the government, interviewed her. We could go down the possible government cover-up rabbit hole, but I think you guys can all come to your own conclusions and theories on that. The family would also go on to do other interviews with Frank Pacino, a UFO researcher in the 1990s. The following quotes are from those interviews. From Kathleen May. We got close enough to it so I could see exactly what it was. I was as close to it as the length of a small car. I was close enough that it squirted oil all over my uniform. The thing lit up from the inside, and it looked more metallic. Now, it didn't have arms. It looked like something like antenna sticking out from it, between the body and the head. The head was a red color. Now, right around the neck, it looked like the neck could rotate. It was just kind of floating. It was about 1 foot to 1.5 feet off the ground. And from Fred May. It was mechanical. It was not alive. Maybe inside the thing there could have been something that was alive. What I saw was either a small spaceship or a suit of some kind. Something that was wearing. It was mechanical. Over the head was a big ace of spades covering. It was something that looked like a helmet, and I think it was. What Mother described as pleats of hanging drapes were actually tubes running vertically. They were metal. They were actually metal pipes. They were as thick as my arm. The eyes were portholes. Sounds like a pretty advanced owl, huh? And speaking of Mr. Frank Pacino, Frank has dedicated several years of his life to this case. He's talked to and had access to all the witnesses over the years, which in turn has opened him up to many theories of his own. One of which is that the meteors that were reported on the night of the sighting were actually UFOs that the government reportedly had fired on. In his theory, the Flatwoods craft was heavily damaged, and it's believed to have also been reported over Washington on its way to Flatwoods. The event was referred to in the newspapers as the Flame over Washington. While I'm not sold on all of Frank's theories, they're certainly interesting. If you would like to dive deeper into the possible UFO and government cover-up route, I recommend reading the revised version of Frank's book, The Braxton County Monster, The Cover-Up of the Flatwoods Monster. Unfortunately, Kathleen May passed away in 2009, but her two sons are still alive and stand by their story to this day. They eventually got tired of the interviews with the press and are no longer talking to reporters, which is completely understandable. My stepson Isaiah and I traveled down to Flatwoods, West Virginia on September 3rd, 2022, nearly 70 years after the iconic sighting on Fisher Farm. I knew this trip would be more of an experience as opposed to an investigation, but I certainly wanted to see what this town had to offer on a historic monster sighting. After a long drive, we would arrive in Flatwoods in the early morning hours. Naturally, the iconic Welcome to Flatwoods sign greeted us upon our arrival. For those of you that haven't been to Flatwoods, West Virginia, I highly recommend making a day of it. It was a fun experience. The town and the county have embraced the story of the Flatwoods Monster, and they've done a great job in bringing it to the forefront of their tourism. I had printed off a bunch of information the prior week. I had a full schedule on tap and planned out for the day. Shortly after we arrived in the town, we visited the Flatwoods Municipal Building, as it has a fun Flatwoods Monster chair out in front of it. Altogether, the county's placed 5 of these monster chairs throughout the county in various places. A scavenger hunt, if you will. Each chair is 10 feet tall and 4 feet wide, and they all feature a unique paint scheme of the monster. It was a very cool feature for the county, and I recommend trying to find all of them if you're in the area. It's also worth noting that the crash site itself is across the street from the municipal building. However, it is private property, so we didn't have access to it. Hopefully someday it'll become available, and if it does, I can guarantee I'll be making a return visit. So what else does the town offer for its Flatwoods Monster researchers and fans? Well, how about a diner with several monster food items, pictures, and an enormous billboard to put your head through for photo opportunities? Yeah, it's pretty damn cool. The spot is located right by the crash site municipal building, and it's a pretty cool little restaurant. I made sure to grab their Flatwoods Monster sandwich before we left town. We ended up driving all through the county to take photos of all the Flatwoods Monster chairs on our way to the Flatwoods Monster Museum. Yep. You heard that right. This beloved monster and tourist attraction even has its own museum in Sutton, West Virginia. And to top it off, there's also a Bigfoot museum down the street. On the way, we stopped at a park, an intersection, and a hotel, and an RV camp to complete our chair scavenger hunt. And we also stopped by the Flatwoods Elementary School to get a feel of where the kids were the night of the Fisher Farm sighting. The Flatwoods Monster Museum itself was also extremely informative on the sightings, and they also had numerous toys, paintings, MetaZoo cards, and other memorabilia on display that's popped up over the years. They also had some cool items related to the original witnesses, and a boatload of merchandise to purchase. While we also enjoyed the Bigfoot Museum, I must admit it was very small but worth the visit. This county is a blueprint on how you can make money from legends and monster sightings. They've done a great job showcasing the story and unique pieces of their county's history. The entire presentation was extremely well done. And to top it off, you can also visit the former home of Gray Barker in Rifle, West Virginia, also in Braxton County. Barker was a well-known author and paranormal investigator who specialized in UFOs and government conspiracies. He was one of the first individuals to write about the Flatwoods Monster, and he popularized the concept of the Men in Black. His article about the Flatwoods Monster, The Monster and the Saucer, was published in Fate magazine in January 1953. Barker would go on to write several books. They Knew Too Much About Flying Saucers, The Silver Bridge about Mothman, and other various publications. Beginning in 1959, Barker would also produce his own magazine publication. While Barker was well known for his storytelling, he also never let facts get in the way of a good story, and at times he even fabricated alleged evidence. Something I obviously don't agree with. So there you have it, one of the weirdest monster, alien, and cryptid sightings out there. What do you think? Was the Flatwoods Monster real, or was the monster created out of sheer panic and confusion? While the Mothman gets most of the monster love in West Virginia, it's been fun watching the story of the Flatwoods Monster become more mainstream over the years, and it's personally one of my favorite monster stories and sightings. For more information on Braxton County and the Flatwoods Monster, make sure to visit the county's website. I kid you not. At braxtonwv.org for all of the latest Flatwoods Monster information and tourism ideas. It's a great source to reference. You can also visit our official website at cbusparanormal.com and add us on social media for the latest news and updates on the Paracast. On next month's episode, we'll continue our weird journey into West Virginia's extensive folklore and discuss the haunting of Hempfield Tunnel. As always, thank you all for the support, and thank you for listening. I'll see you all again next month.